Okay, so I'm here with Ken Parris. We're sitting here on your porch, Ken, and there's been a lot of talk about your house and, things that maybe happened with your house, things that were neglected, potential code violations, all of that. So, if you can speak to that a little bit. I know for me personally, me even driving by before you moved back here and seeing, some of the peeling paint or things that needed to be fixed up. People love their historic homes here in Washington. So if you could speak to that, it would be great.
Sure. Well, thank you, Michelle. Thanks for the opportunity to sort of visit this topic and revisit this topic, because I think in the original interview that we did, we sort of touched on it. But yeah, there hasn't been a lot of things posted recently on fake Facebook pages about my home, and so I appreciate the opportunity to speak to that. So, some of the allegations are that my home was condemned, or my home was falling in, or I wasn't taking care of it, and none of that is
a blight tax,
and none of that is true. So some years I've been sort of on the city, trying to work with the city, with Mayor DeGoley and Mayor Barnett, others to, let's get something going in this community. Let's get the economy going. Let's get, lower electrical rates. Let's get lower broadband rates, all the things that I'm talking about in my campaign. And nothing was getting done. At some point, I just get frustrated. And so I thought, well, if you're not going to invest in the economy of the city, if you're not going to fix this city, then, I'm not going to paint my house. And I think we talked about that in my last. So then there came a time where I got a notification from the city that they were going to cite me for what they said were code violations. And so this started what ended up being sort of a long and interesting process, and I'll tell you in a minute why it was interesting. But the first notice I got had about 5 items on it, and so I responded to those, and after some time, I was sort of called to come in to a magistrate court session. And what I came to understand through this process, and what I came to know, is that my house was targeted. My house was selected and intentionally sort of directed to go after by leadership in the city. I've probably stood on 80% of the porches in this community in the last couple of months, and I can tell you nothing about my house was any worse than some of the houses in our community, including some houses on Robert Toombs Avenue right now, which hadn't had paint in years. I think they leave the ladders leading up against them, so that sort of tricks people to think they're painting them, but they hadn't been painted in years. And other houses on Liberty. There's houses in the community that are in all sort of stages of repair. And so mine was no different, except mine was different. So I attended this first magistrate session. I think it was in June of 2021, and was shocked when I got there. Shocked because Michael Horgan was the magistrate judge, so he was there. There was a recorder there. There were 2 building officials, and as I came to see then and later came to realize, this is something that for some reason our city manager and I guess our mayor were willing to spend a lot of money on, which I didn't understand given the state of our economy otherwise. Not only that, the night that I got there were about 30 people in the room, and I was only one of 2 white people that were there. That didn't make sense to me. And in subsequent meetings, the ratio was often similar. And I know there were some times when, like Councilman Larry Hill was there, former Mayor Willie Burns. It just seemed like certain people were getting sort of picked out and put through this process. But in my process, there was some alleged things that they said weren't done with my home. The painting, is not really a code violation. Now they said if you leave bare wood, it can be. And so I was willing to address and mitigate things like that. But and Jimmy Toto came, and he was on this porch where you're sitting, and we had great conversations and sort of went through things. There was always things we didn't agree on. I've had a builder's license since the mid 2005, I think, is when I first sat for that's when you first had to sit for an exam for a builder's license in Georgia. And I subsequently have, had that license placed in 3 other states. So building codes are something that I'm familiar with and something that I worked with a lot in sort of the businesses I had. So it was not foreign to me. And so we would have conversations about building codes. And anyway, we went through the process. So that was in June, and there were a couple of other hearings. Well, At that time, I also discovered through a friend of mine in Atlanta who had seen on a Facebook posting that was actually by the Washington Chamber of Commerce about my home on a Facebook site. And again, the same sort of, look, fallen in, decrepit. There was a thing called the Georgia Trust for Historic Preservation. And the Georgia Trust for Historic Preservation is based in Atlanta. It's a predominantly large group of mostly very wealthy white people. And they like to travel around the state on they call them rambles, and they just go around communities and sort of, ooh and ah over old homes. They had come to my property without contacting me and sort of walked all around my property and taken a bunch of photos of my property, and they had posted it on their website in a place they call Places of Peril, and inferred that my house had been condemned by the city of Washington. It was falling in and needed to be repaired. I mean, it was just, none of it was
And
correct.
have you been contacted by anybody about this?
No one. And again, a friend of mine, it was a Facebook connection that a friend of mine saw, and it was the chamber director at that time who had wrote a scathing, and by the way, this is a time when our Chamber of Commerce had, like one job on its job board. It was a volunteer position, and I'm thinking, why is the chamber kind of harassing people about old homes? Why don't they go out and figure out how? Anyway, so that was all going on. I had an attorney. He wrote the Georgia Trust for Historic Preservation a letter and said, look, this is not right. You've misrepresented. This is slander, and you got to take it down. And they did. They took it down, 2 days later. Just a couple of months later, I got a call from Judy Anderson, Councilman Andy Anderson's sister, and she asked about showing my home to a potential buyer. I'm a real estate broker, and so I, represent all my properties if there's ever a sales transaction. And she was working as a real estate agent, and so she would have contacted me for that purpose. And so, as I always do, I inquired about the buyers, and she told me the buyer was a woman named Annie Freeman from Atlanta. Well, Annie Freeman is Bill DeGolian's sister. And so in this time when the city was sort of, trying to say my house was falling in and condemned, and the Georgia Trust for Historic Preservation was calling it Places in Peril, suddenly Bill DeGolian's sister wants to come look at my house to buy. What I also found out is that Bill DeGolian is on the board of the Georgia Trust for Historic Preservation. I think at that time he was serving as their treasurer, and when I went to their website, even though he was mayor of Washington, on the website it said Atlanta was his primary residence, and I think Washington second. So I just found that all too circumstantial, that there was this effort to try to depress the price of my home, to drive us out of town, to cause my family to sell this home at a loss. It was just too much. So anyway, we went through the process, and it was a few months later, Judge Kidd was hired from Elberton. The city got rid of Michael Horgan. I guess they weren't pleased with the way he was doing things. Maybe he wasn't being hard enough on who they wanted to target. And so they hired a judge to come in from Elberton. And he's good. He's very thorough. He's a good attorney. He's a good judge. And then they hired a solicitor. And so when I was going in for my last meetings, I would go in, and so now there's a solicitor, and there's a judge, and there's a recorder, and there's 2 building officials. The attorneys and the solicitor, I think, are $250, $300 an hour every month. And then the staff, they have to prepare for these meetings. They have to be at the meetings. They have to prepare reports after the meetings. I mean, we're spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on sort of going after people about their homes. And I just found that to be sort of a malign focus and malign process. I mean, to me, the better thing is, let's fix the economy. And that's part of, what I'm saying as I run for mayor. Let's fix the economy. Let's get small business here. Let's get the economy working. Let's lower people's utility bills. Let's lower internet bills. Let's make it so our economy has turnover. And I promise you, if we will do that, if we will put an economic pulse in this community, the houses will take care of themselves. You won't need to send people out from City Hall to target people and tell them, fix your house, fix your... I mean, I saw an elderly woman sort of stand in front of this podium and a microphone and sort of get, fix your roof. And she's like, I'm trying, And another elderly man telling him to fix his roof at a time when contractors are in short supply, materials are in short supply. Nobody could get, and the quote he had was 3.5, 4 times what it would cost to repair an asphalt roof at that. It's not what we should be doing to our people. I want to see that change. This should go away. We can do things in our community to make sure that our homes are kept in great condition. I think it has more to do with what we do with our economy and what we do with our city than going around and sort of intimidating people.
And I think too that there are people who have issues with their house that actually impact their utility prices and, you know, their ability to live comfortably in their house too. So, you know, maybe if there were dollars that we could help bring into the community to help people keep their properties up.
Oh, yeah, there are programs that we could bring into this community easily to do just that. And by the way, if we reduce the utility rates and the electric bills and the sewer and water bills, as I would intend to do as your mayor, it's going to put hundreds of dollars a month back in some people's pockets. They will then have the money to invest. I mean, you know, when I'm hearing from people still today that they're, you know, in a very small house, that their power bill is $400, $500, $600, it sucks all the money out of the economy. It prevents them from having, they may want to do some of these projects and they just can't, because by the time they pay a mortgage or rent and by the time they paid their power bill and bought some groceries, there's nothing left. I mean, you know, we've got, another big issue of mine, I mean, we've got city employees have worked for the city for over 20 years that are making $14 an hour. That's criminal. If I'm the mayor, everyone will make a living wage. I mean, if you want people to be able to do for their community, you have to pay people a living wage. And by doing that, we can start to turn over some of that money to the economy, and people can have money to do things with it. And people have money to buy a home, reduce their utility bills, put more money in their pocket, and people will become homeowners. I'm convinced we can do this. I know we can make it happen. But it's unfortunate that all this has happened, you know, that Bruce Bailey has reported that he made the open records request for all the photos and all the reports from Jimmy Toto that were put on a fake Facebook page. To me, that just is more of an example of what I've been talking about. I mean, if you vote for that, if you vote for those behaviors in Bruce Bailey, in some of the other, you know, the people that have been trolling the internet, you know, his wife's been on there, Lisa Fisher's been on there, David Fisher's wife. So these are the people that have been attacking people on the internet. They're demonstrating what their behavior and character is going to be. And if they do that now, then we certainly can expect that's what we're going to experience with our city if they are elected. It'll be the same thing we've had for the last 4 years. Acrimony, fighting, name calling, subtle racism, subtle bigotry. For me, that's got to go away.
So to clarify, so you were never charged a blight tax?
No, never charged a blight tax.
And were you ever charged were there any citations, or was it, here are the things that need to be fixed, you fixed them, you went back to the judge and said, okay, and he said, yes, this is fine?
Yes, it was that. That was it. And, you know, again, it was just, and it was interesting to me how when I would respond and explain, you know, what was code, what was not, and how things were getting changed and adjusted, suddenly the list would just start. It's like they didn't want to be done, you know, target. I won't be convinced that it was not intentional.
Have you ever spoken to Bill DeGolian about this?
No, because I communicated with Bill DeGolian about the CARES Act funding and also about rural broadband initiatives. And when I was in communication with him about CARES Act funding, I was asking, you know, where's the money and where's it been spent? How much did we get? How did we spend it? And so he sort of responded to my email by bringing Jerry DeBen in the conversation, and Jerry wouldn't ever answer. I mean, look, it's not hard to create a spreadsheet. You know, if you know how to do one, it's not hard to create a spreadsheet that says, here's how much came in, this went out, this went out, this went out, that total and this total equal each other. This is how the CARES Act funding was spent. To this day, I still don't have that. But he brought Jerry DeBen in, and after a couple of emails, when I was asking for this information and couldn't get it, I got an email back, and I've got them somewhere. I got an email from Jerry DeBen that basically said, well, you know, maybe this would be better if we had a phone call. Well, no, I'm not going to get on the phone. You know, put it in writing. And then he sends that email to Bill DeGolian and says, how do you want to respond to this? Now, I'm copied in this thread. How do you want to respond to this? In other words, he wants me to put it in writing, not take a phone call. The next email I got was from Bill DeGolian that said, I've checked with basically something like, I've checked with the city attorney, even among open records requests, you know, you're just asking too many questions. So we don't feel like we have to answer your questions. And the truth is, I'd ask one question. I just could never get an answer to it. But when the mayor and the city manager sort of tell you, you know, you're asking too many questions about simple budget things, I don't care how many times you ask, you're never going to get it. This is their way. It's like I've said before, people that don't have things to hide don't hide things. And if I'm mayor, everything will be transparent. People won't have problem getting information like this. And just, out of frustration, like a lot of people have experienced, you just sort of go, okay, fine, I'm done. I got better things to do with my life. I got better things to do with my time. I'm not wasting time on this. So no, I never approached Bill DeGolian about this. I mean, I think the sort of the nefarious nature of it, when I found out his sister was who was trying to come see my house as a buyer in the middle of all those, some sort of assault from two sides, both of which he was related to either as mayor or a board member, that sort of answered it all for me.
Well, I'm happy to see what the house looks like now.
Thank you.
And I remember when, you were apparently in process, driving up the street, because it is a prominent house.
Yes.
And coming up here, it was nice to see lights on and to see the repairs and to see the paint and to see the way it looks now.
Thank you.
We still love our homes.
Oh, it's a great, I mean, I just tell people, this is such a special place. When Anthony Poulain came here in the 1700s and found this grove of cedars and put the beginning of the house in the middle of that. I mean, Indians had been on this land before. I mean, the people of those days knew this was a special place. And as you sit here in the corner of this porch, there's sort of a constant breeze. Those are the kind of things I think in those days people built around. So it really is it's just in a unique spot on the earth. And I'm thrilled to be here. I love the home. It's been through a lot of iterations in 200 years, and it will continue to go through iterations. There's a lot of things I'd love to see for the house and the property, and then after I'm gone, I'm sure there'll be others that'll come along and they'll want to see things done. My hope is this house will be here for at least another 250 years. So.